Alright, so Tony Ferguson has officially been cut from the UFC, but unfortunately that doesn't mean he's going to be free of receiving more head trauma in the future because this guy just refuses to retire and has already been signed to the newest MMA organization in town in the Global Fight League, aka the GFL, and I will be giving you all my thoughts on this throughout the video. Damn dude, this truly is the end of an era. I mean, not even just because of Ferguson being released, but on the same day the UFC also released Alexander Gustafsson as well as Chris Weidman. And although I'm definitely pretty meh about Weidman being released, when it comes to T-Ferg and Gus, I really do feel a distinct sense of sadness knowing that their time in the UFC has come to an end. Both Tony and Alex are both top-tier candidates on my greatest fighters to never win an undisputed belt list, and these guys had a ton of banger performances on top of banger fights. And when it comes to Ferguson in particular, sure, it's not like he was necessarily the most technical fighter, and honestly, he did lack a lot of basic fundamentals that wound up being his undoing once his athletic qualities began to fade, but the guy was a fucking junkyard dog out there, man. For everything that Tony lacked in terms of fundamentals and strategy, he made up for in grit, pressure, and creativity. With that being said, although this guy is a bona fide UFC legend, mainly for his 12-fight win streak that turned into an 8-fight losing streak, I completely understand why he's been let go from the UFC. I mean, honestly, Dana White and Hunter Campbell really gave Tony every chance they could to get this guy to turn back the clock and get a win, but once his losing streak started, it was clear that he was just not capable of hanging with the best of the best anymore. And even though he already took a ton of damage throughout his win streak, once he started losing, it seemed like every time he made his way into the octagon, it just resulted in him taking another savage beating. In a perfect world, Tony really should never be allowed to fight in a professional MMA match ever again. The guy's turning 41 years old in just a couple of weeks, he's already taken a lifetime's worth of head trauma from his time in the UFC, and frankly, I'm sure that he's already suffering from symptoms of CTE. And I'd really like to think that any self-respecting MMA promotion that actually values the health and well-being of fighters would have a little bit more dignity than to sign Tony Ferguson at this stage in his career, yet here we are with the GFL. If you're not aware of these jokers yet, then you should know that the GFL is the new kid on the block when it comes to MMA orgs. They were founded in 2023, however, they spent the entirety of 2024 setting up their business and operations, thus their first event is set to take place in April of this year. And yeah, let's just say besides the fact that they have signed fighters that really have no business competing anymore, much like Tony Ferguson, it really seems like these guys have absolutely no idea what they're doing. Some noteworthy athletes that they have signed include Tony Ferguson, obviously, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, Derek Brunson, Tyron Woodley, Alexander Gustafsson, Gegard Mousasi, Benson Henderson, Andrei Arlovsky, Frank Mir, Rashad Evans, Uriah Hall, Chad Mendes, Uriah Faber, Junior Dos Santos, and Yoel Romero, just to name a few. If you're noticing that the GFL has a remarkable amount of old, past their prime former UFC fighters, then you're not the only one. This has resulted in people repurposing the GFL's initials as the Geriatric Fight League or the Grandpa Fight League. And the weird thing is, I've seen people say that they're impressed that the GFL was able to acquire such high-profile names even though they're a brand new promotion. And sure, I would be impressed by their roster if it was like 2012. Also, you guys need to check out this Nightmare Fuel intro that they concocted for their 2025 season draft that they live streamed. This shit is absolutely horrifying. The fact that the owners of the GFL saw this AI constructed monstrosity and thought that this would be a good thing to open up their inaugural draft really says a lot about the fools that are running this clown show. Also, this would be a good time to mention that the GFL isn't like regular promotions in that they operate on a team-based structure, and each team is tied to major cities including London, Dubai, Sao Paulo, Miami, Los Angeles, and New York. And yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I kinda think that this setup is kind of dumb and doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess it's kinda an interesting idea, kinda, but what is the purpose of having a team-based structure in MMA if they're not only not going to be fighting at the same time, but they're not even going to be training together either? Moreover, having a team-based structure to the fights just feels really unnecessary and gimmicky to me. Like, how many tanks, DPS, and healers are there going to be? I don't know, I guess I'm interested to see how it actually plays out when rubber meets the road, but I'm definitely not going to tune in for the sole purpose of rooting for any specific team. It kinda just feels like regular MMA but with extra steps, and frankly, I really wouldn't be surprised at all if they end up scrapping this system after this year, but I guess we'll see. But how can the GFL possibly fail with this A-list cast of broadcast professionals, including generic blonde woman, drug addict weirdo, Brenda Schwab, and Mike Goldberg? Oh sweet Jesus, this promotion is doomed to fail. And don't get me wrong, I think it's cool that the GFL is promising that 50% of all revenue is going to be paid to their athletes, but when their yearly revenue is going to inevitably total $72, I highly doubt that this is going to be viable for the fighters. There is just genuinely no logic or rationale behind any of the decisions that these guys are making, and I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if and when they go underwater. So the fact that we have Tony Ferguson, a legend of the sport who cut his teeth in the fires of the UFC lightweight division fighting in this actual shit show is really depressing to me. And do you know what makes me even more depressed? Listening to Tony's interview during the draft.
My question for you is, why is he doing it? What's Tony's why? And then if, I'm sure you have an explanation, then we can go from there,
I was down here and I had this conversation. We were watching, when I first started the GFL, and I heard you saying that's the why. My wife asked me my why. Everybody has a why. And for the longest time, I thought my why was my why, and it really wasn't. I was doing things for the wrong reason. Not the bad reasons or good reasons. It was just not the reasons which I needed to stay focused. But in the process of doing all this, I've grown immensely. You're talking about learning how to bounce back from losses and wins. Like, I could tell you already, growing up, I only have a handful of losses in different sports, man. It just never happened. And then God was like, look, dude, you're going to take this period of your life and you're going to start to figure out exactly what you want to do. I had taken my very first break, Brandon, and I took 6 months off after I got my hair did from Bosley. Actually, it's funny how it works, but my new hairline, and I couldn't work out. I couldn't sweat for a while. And I want to say shout out to them and my management, Famous Sports, for doing all this and still looking after me, because when you lose so much, people just want to disregard you, throw you to the side like you're an old or young or whatever the hell it is. I love the way the commissioner's saying things. He's doing everything. The teams are evenly split, and it's a tournament bracket where you know where you're going to go. It's 3 to 4 to win it. I have won nationals, I've won state, I've won individual and team. I'm ready to win a team title for this world title, and that's my why.
Yep.
And it's been a long time, Brandon, since I've talked like this and I've been like this, but I've got a new fire in me, my bro, that it's, you put somebody in front of me and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to finish the fight.
Awesome.
Oh, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, nothing about what Tony just said during his ramblings indicates to me that he's going to have any more success in the GFL than the tail end of his UFC career. But the scariest part about his answer to me isn't the unfocused CTE-fueled word salad that he vomited out. It's the fact that Tony genuinely sounds highly motivated for this next step of his career. Meaning, if things go well for him in his first GFL fight, then he's going to keep pressing his luck and keep chasing the dragon of winning a world title. And on the flip side, if he loses his first fight with the GFL, then I can definitely see his stubborn ass keep on rolling the dice with his health just to feel the glory of winning a fight again. In either case, I think it's much more likely than not that regardless of how good or bad his first performance in this new promotion goes, Tony's pride, ego, and delusions of grandeur aren't going to let him hang up the gloves. I'll say this though, seeing as Tony's first fight in the GFL seems to be against Dylan Dennis, I think that there's a very realistic chance that Tony's finally going to put a stop to this losing streak that he's been on. I mean, he definitely beats Dennis, right? Anyways, whether Tony wins 10 fights or loses 10 fights in the GFL, the only certainty is that he's going to take more head trauma than a guy like him should be taking. Because let's be real here, Tony's already taken enough brain damage for 5 lifetimes, so the fact that by his own admission he's still dead set on pursuing championships is pretty scary. Like, let's not forget here that on top of the very serious damage that Ferguson's already taken throughout his career, this is the same guy that had a psychotic break just a few years ago. Over the course of a month-long period in 2019, Tony woke up his family in the middle of the night and drove them out to the California desert in order to avoid a massive flood that never came. He woke up his wife in the middle of the night by screaming in her face that she was a witch, completely destroyed the house that he and his family lived in, jumped out of a moving car onto a busy freeway during rush hour traffic, on top of many other terrifying moments. Now, you might be saying that this psychotic breakdown might directly be CTE, but I've also seen people say that he has schizophrenia and that this was a manic episode. With all this being said, Tony should no longer be fighting. This man is quite possibly schizophrenic and surely already has CTE, so shame on the GFL and all the dummies that work there for allowing this to happen. And you might be saying that Tony is a grown man and can make his own decisions, which is true, but at the same time, he's also not fully right in the head, and in the case of a guy like Tony, any would-be promotion should have some degree of standards to the fighters that they sign. Look, of course Tony wants to continue fighting. Tony's a crazy person and fighting is his life. But just because somebody wants to fight professionally doesn't mean that they should be allowed to. And given the sheer amount of punishment that this guy has taken throughout his recent fights, along with his already shaky mental health, I really think that the GFL picking him up is nothing short of unethical. And even though I'm not preying on the GFL's downfall or whatever, because I think that they're destined for bankruptcy as is, I'm not going to be watching their events to support the promotion. I'll be watching to support Tony and all the former UFC legends that are fighting in it. There's a difference, I think. Anyways, that's the video for today. Definitely let me know what you think about Tony continuing his CTE development program now that he's in the GFL. Are you concerned about his health and well-being, or do you think that he's entitled to make his own decisions by continuing fighting? As always, if you like the video, then like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so. I appreciate you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.